My angle to this whole discussion is this, that when we discuss leadership or leadership failures, we often end the conversation by blaming or pointing accusing fingers at the set man. So while I believe that it is true that the buck stops at the leader's table, we often and almost always criminally, I repeat, neglect the enablers. And I'll give you an example, two examples. If you look at, for instance, former Governor Obiano's mismanagement of Anambra's resources, the whole blame points at Obiano, but people often fail to acknowledge the enablers. For instance, the State House of Assembly that keeps indiscriminately and almost criminally approving loan requests for him and vehement requests for him. You also look at the critical institution of governance like the Igwes, the PGs, who almost always support without asking questions, criminally enabling what the governor is doing without asking questions. So while Obiano was predestined to act the way he did, I want to believe that if Anambra had a more robust State House of Assembly, that depending on who you ask, that Obiano's governance failures would not have been this pronounced. That's number one. Then number two, I'll give you an instance, and there is this market that caught fire somewhere in Anambra State, and the governor went there and promised to redo the market for them. The governor also promised to set up firefighting equipment and then help some of the victims with loan or soft loans to enable grants, not loans, to enable them take off. And while that was cheered and applauded, the governor does not have to directly deal with all the marketers. So the market has a leadership already that it was its duty to interface with the government. But I'm aware that when that market leadership that has bonds, when the people of the market sent the leadership to engage the government actors to redeem their pledges, they went to government house, they drank a few bottles of champagne, and they forgot why they were there. So I want to believe that no matter how good or bad that governor was, if you had good market leadership, the outcome may have been slightly different. So I'm saying all this to make the point that when you look at governance, and I'm not saying that Governor Soludo has failed, but when you look at governance, it is important that we also look at the enablers of good governance and enablers of bad governance. The second point is this. Today, the Southeast has an important opportunity. There are 3 vacancies in government houses, so there are 3 governorship slots to be filled. There are 15 senatorial slots to be filled. There are 43 House of Representative slots to be filled in the Southeast. There are 129 State House of Assembly slots to be filled in the Southeast. Although the local government elections are varied and may not even hold in some states, but you have 104 local government seats to be filled. So as at today, and in the general elections that is coming up in 8 months, the Southeast as a whole has 190 vacancies. 190 vacancies. And we're not talking about these vacancies. We are focused on the set man, the governor, and the president. And I argue that we should do better. So I believe that Soludo is coming along with a lot of goodwill. I want to believe him when he has assured us that he will become that leader we are looking for. But I feel that there is an urgent need to assist him by electing credible members of the State House of Assembly, because one man alone cannot have all good, And when there seems to be some form of governance lapse, you have other people to point to the governor. You might not be getting it right in so and so places. I'll end with this last point. While a lot of us talk a good game about good governance and what I argue is that the apple does not always fall far from the tree. Well, we've talked about 190 elective vacancies that are to be filled. What is even more insidious to me is that there are more appointing vacancies to be filled. The senior legislators, the federal legislators will be entitled to, I think, 6 slots to appoint their legislative aides, senior legislative aides, and all of those things. The governor, depending, has almost 100 to 150 slots to appoint his cabinet, 20-something commissioners, special assistants, special advisors, and all of those things. So those of us who talk about good governance, should do well by engaging, by, if the need be, volunteer in some of these campaigns, volunteer in LG election campaigns, volunteer in senatorial campaigns, volunteer in governorship campaigns. Because if you volunteer, there's a good chance that if the governor or whoever it is that wins is picking his cabinet or his staff or associates, that he will pick from his campaign team. You don't allow Aberos and touts and people who we accuse of licking people's boots to volunteer. And after they've done the volunteer work, you expect that the governor will throw all of them away and now appoint technocrats. So if we have technocrats among us on this Twitter space, I encourage us to identify good candidates running for elective position and try to, if need be, volunteer or support what they are doing. So that when they get into the office, there's a good chance for us playing one form of role or the other, whether advisory or in any capacity. I yield the mic. Thank you so much for the opportunity.